Hi everyone, my name is Amber, welcome back to my channel. This is my October wrap up. I read 10 books in October, which means that I'm getting back on track with my reading. The past couple of months I haven't managed to get to double digits, but 10 is a really good number for me when I'm not trying to do any weird reading challenges. So I'm really happy with 10. I also read some really good books in October, so that also pleases me. Let's go ahead and talk about them. The first book that I read and finished in October was The Whispers by Ashley Audrain. This is by the author of The Push, which is a very good kind of mystery, almost family thriller, and The Whispers is also a family drama with a sprinkle of mystery thrown in throughout the book. It's set in a small neighbourhood in which we are following 4 families in the wake of a tragic accident. A small boy falls from a balcony and is hospitalised, and the mystery that runs throughout the book is figuring out how or what led up to this point. And so we go back in time. There are flashbacks in which we kind of find out what the family members and neighbours are doing in the lead up to this and their backgrounds, and it's all leading up to this big event. And then you've also got the present day where the neighbours and the family are finding out what happened to the boy and that he's in hospital. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 3.5 stars. It wasn't quite a 4-star read because I didn't think it was amazingly paced. I did think that the pacing could have been tightened a little, and I also kind of wanted a character who I was rooting for and there wasn't one. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing in books, but in this instance I did want a character who I liked. I was very captivated by all of the relationships and friendships in this book and how all of the neighbours kind of interacted with one another and also interacted with their families and children as well. I think the marketing for this book does need some work because I've seen a lot of people referring to it as a thriller or a mystery, and while there is a mystery, like I said, which runs throughout the book, it's definitely more about kind of motherhood, desperation of mothers and parents, and self-punishment as well. So it's a very good book. I'd recommend reading it if you're into literary fiction. I then read Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I'm not a huge romance person, so it does take a lot for me to pick up a romance book, and then also it takes even more for me to really enjoy it, and I loved this book. I gave it 4 stars. It's not an all-time favourite, so I haven't given it a 5, but it did very much impress me. So when I read the synopsis, I was comparing it to Heart of Dixie and Zoe and Wade, and that's exactly what we got, apart from the age gap romance. The 2 main characters in this book are, I think, like 8 or 9 years apart, and the woman is older in this relationship, which we don't see very often. But the Heart of Dixie part, it comes in when the main character, she is a doctor in the ER, and she comes across this small town one day and she meets a guy from this small town and has a one-night stand with him, and then romance ensues. I thought the romance was super sweet and really adorable, while it also tackled heavier topics such as emotional abuse, gaslighting, and there's also physical abuse in there as well, but that's not to do with the main character, that's a side character who is going through that. So lots of trigger warnings for this romance book. I also really enjoyed reading about the difficult family relationships that both of the main characters were experiencing and dealing with. The female main character, whose name I can't remember in case you couldn't figure that out, her family are really pushing for her to become basically like the hospital chief of some sort, and they're really disappointed that she's gone into the ER side of things because that's just not what their family does. They're like a legacy doctor family, so they're unhappy with her. The male main character was raised by his grandparents. His mother, I think, had him young and then kind of just left town and keeps trying to borrow money from him because she's getting herself into difficult situations. I love that they came together. There was, of course, a 3rd act breakup or drama, but that's fine, I can deal with that now. I think the thing that I loved most of all about this book was the small town and all of the characters in it and how they were looking after one another, and how the main character from the city was becoming a part of this small town family. I really want more of these types of romances, please. So after The Whispers, I think I wanted more family drama, and so I picked up Hold My Girl. This one is about a white woman and a black woman, and she switches their eggs as both women are going through fertility treatment. So the black woman, who is mixed race, ends up having the white woman's baby, and the black woman does have a white husband, so the baby is very light-skinned. They actually don't find anything out for a couple of years, and so the baby is raised by the black woman and her husband, and then everything comes to light. The fertility clinic get in touch and they explain what happened, and so both women have to go to court because they both want custody of this child. I did really enjoy the way that this one was handled. I did think that the pacing could have used some work. I did find that it dragged a little bit in the middle, although I still very much enjoyed reading about this story, about the court case, about both women at least trying to prioritise the baby, because that should have been the goal there. And I really enjoyed pondering about the ethics of the situation as well. There were certain things that really frustrated me, and I think they were meant to be frustrating actually, so that's not the author's fault. It was just a very difficult topic to read about, so I would go into this one with caution if you don't typically read sort of difficult subject matters, but it was very, very good. I did enjoy it, so I gave this one 3 stars. I then read Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. This is a haunted house horror book. In this one, the main character has left home and her father has been imprisoned when she was younger for being a serial killer. He has died. She is called back home by her mother, who is at this point dying because she's quite old, and she's trying to get the house in order. So the main character ends up back home, and I think a podcaster, or there's a guy living there basically, and it's very weird. It's a weird situation. I think it's putting together some sort of documentary podcast thing about the home and about the serial killer father and what happened back in the day. So as the reader, you're kind of going through flashbacks and present day timelines, trying to figure out what happened, how much the main character knew about her father, which turns out is quite a lot. You find out from the beginning, and you see how it all affected her. I did find it very interesting up until like the last 60 or so pages, and then it took a bit of a turn, and I did like the twist. I didn't see any of that coming. Obviously it's a horror book, there's going to be sort of twistiness when you get to the reveal, but I think by that point I was starting to lose interest, and I wanted more about the psychology behind having a serial killer for a father instead of the horror direction that it kind of went in. I feel like the author could have woven in the horror element with the mental health and psychology part a lot better than she actually did. So I gave this one 2.5 stars. I then reread 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray. This is the first book in an old school YA sci-fi series, and I've only read this one from the series so far. This is about a girl whose parents are killed. They've been working on a time travel parallel dimension sort of machine called the Firebird, and this device allows you to skip into parallel universes, and in doing so you kind of inhabit the body of your other self while you're in this other universe. I remember really enjoying this one at the time, but now I don't really love it, and I'm not sure I want to carry on with the series. So it kind of throws you in with no build up at all. You're just like shoved in there after her parents are already dead, after someone has stolen the device, and then after that introduction there are a ton of info dumps, and I really didn't like it. There was also a point where the main character is living in another self's body. She does things with a guy, and I really didn't like that aspect of things either, because it wasn't addressed that she was sort of taking over someone's body in such a way. Really didn't enjoy that part, so I'm not sure I want to finish the series. I did recently buy books 2 and 3 because I remember loving this one, but I should have just got book 1 or borrowed it from the library or something. Unfortunately I did buy this secondhand. I might try book 2 and see if I feel like carrying on, and then just unhaul them if I don't really care. I then read Last One at the Party. This is a pandemic book. So this one is about the last woman on Earth after a pandemic has wiped everyone else out. She seems to be immune to it, and so in the beginning of the book you see the virus sort of taking over. She talks about what happened to her husband and to her family and friends, and then you see her going on a journey. She also finds a dog, which is adorable. I actually really enjoy reading about pandemics even after everything that's happened. I always have. I don't really know why. I think I like seeing how people react to them and how governments react and prepare, how people prepare, things like that. This book didn't really have much of that, but it was still really fast paced, and I was very intrigued to see what would happen to the main character and if we would figure out why she's the only one who's immune. We don't, by the way. I can't even remember if anything is implied. I don't think it was. But nonetheless, I did really enjoy following her journey. All the survival stuff was very interesting. I love that she met a dog. That was adorable. I didn't actually realise that she didn't have a name until I read the reviews on Goodreads. That was interesting, that I felt at least somewhat connected to her, even though she was nameless. I wasn't a massive fan of the flashbacks because it kept going back into the past, talking about the character's life and build up to the pandemic and what had happened to her. I didn't like any of the side characters at all. I didn't even really like the main character all that much, but I did grow to, I guess, respect her in the present day timeline. I then read One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This was just fine. I gave it 3 stars. Oh, I gave Last One at the Party 3 stars as well. I also gave this one 3 stars. This is about a woman who is living in present day, and she has been jumping from college to college, basically trying to get away from her mother, who is obsessed with trying to find her uncle, who went missing when she was younger. So the main character is now in New York City. She's trying to ignore her mother's requests to look for the uncle, and she's trying to just sort of settle, get on with her life. She moves in with some quirky people into a flat, and then one day she meets this other main character on the train. Her name is Jane, and she is stuck. She's time traveling, or is kind of stuck between times. So the main character, whose name is August, she tries to find a way to get Jane out of this time loop that she is stuck in and off of the train. And then yeah, it's just a romance book and there's some really good friendship in there. I really enjoyed the mystery about what was happening to Jane and the sort of magical realism side of things, and also it was really quite funny when Jane and August were talking about like modern day stuff and Jane was trying to learn all of this. It was very entertaining. I did read it in one sitting for Doer's 24-hour readathon, but I'm not going to read it again, so I'm just going to unhaul it. I then read People to Follow, which is a new adult thriller book. I enjoyed this one a lot more than I expected to. Like I said, this is a new adult, although it's kind of being labelled as YA, and I really wish publishers would accept that this age category is a thing now. NA isn't just all college smut. This book is about a bunch of influencers who are taken to a private island and kind of pitted against each other. They're told that it's for a reality TV documentary drama sort of thing, and they all do various kinds of influencing. Some of them are like Instagram people, some of them are YouTubers, and then they get stranded in a storm and no one is coming for them, and then they start to die one by one. I really enjoyed the rich people influencer drama. That was fun. I found it very intriguing, and as always I didn't like the romance that cropped up in this, but I never do with thrillers. That's just not what I'm reading for. The murders and the reveal were also really fun, so I'd actually highly recommend this thriller. And then I listened to Ancestors on audio, and this one is a non-fiction book. It's basically about Britain's ancestors, and the author talks you through various different skeletal remains that have been found in Britain and talks about the origins of them, what the scientists can figure out from these remains as well, and what it kind of implies about cultures at the time and where sort of influences come from. So I really enjoyed this one. It was very, very interesting. It just took me a while to read it. I started it a few months ago, but that's because I've not really had a chance to listen to many audiobooks. I used to listen to them on my commute and I don't really commute that much anymore. So that's the only reason it took me ages. I do really want to read the author's other book, which I think is called Burials, because I think that will be very interesting, and I hope that she narrates the audiobook for that one as well, and then I can get it on audio. I really did enjoy her narration, so I gave this one 4 stars. And then finally, on a whim, I decided to reread Fourth Wing with my friend because the sequel, Iron Flame, is coming out on the 7th of November. So I just wanted to make sure I had everything straight in my head. There was nothing that I could have missed. I wanted to look out for anything in particular that could be foreshadowing as well. I did a recap of Fourth Wing and posted it to my channel. It's also up on my website, Recaptains, as well, where I talk you through the plot and tell you things that you're probably going to need to know for Iron Flame. I did pick up on some foreshadowing in here actually that may come up in Iron Flame or later on in the series. I don't really want to tell you what all that was because it might spoil things, but yeah, I picked up on some stuff. And I've also been reading or watching interviews with the author, and she's spoken about how far she has planned this series. She says that all 5 books are planned out. Obviously this one's already written, as is Iron Flame. The other 3 are planned out, and that gives me hope because I was a bit worried that because Iron Flame is coming out so soon after Fourth Wing that it would be a bit of a mess. But now I'm feeling a bit better after having watched those interviews, and she also explains how to pronounce various names in a few of these interviews as well, which I really appreciated because I was really struggling with some of the pronunciation. So overall, really enjoyed my reread of this one. I thought that the middle, or like pages like 50 to 150, 200, they weren't as strong as I thought they were when I first read it. Once the dragons get introduced, this is absolutely a great book, 5 stars, but the beginning is a bit slow. So I only gave this one 4 stars, but nonetheless I'm really looking forward to Iron Flame. Really glad that I reread this one before the sequel comes out. So those are all the books that I read in October. Let me know if you've read any of these, if you're interested in reading any of them, if you agree or disagree with any of my thoughts. I read a really good range of books in October, I think, and I really like mixing up genres, so I think that's why the month went so well for me. So I'm going to try to do the same in November. I've already posted my TBR and I've got a good mixture in there. I think the only thing I'm really missing is some good literary fiction or some thrillers, so I might have to look into that because doing this wrap up has made me realise that I do need to keep things fresh and pacey. So I'm really looking forward to November, and I'm especially looking forward to Iron Flame, so I really hope it's good. I'm crossing everything. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll speak to you all in the next one. Bye.